Welcome back to part 2 of our week 4 ECE 127 classroom management overview. We're going to now go in and discuss conscious discipline session 2, which was focusing on becoming brain smart. So just a few overview bullet points. Understand that permanent behavior change requires us to manage our inner states so that we can change how we respond outwardly to others. This session also explored how to be a co-regulator with children while strengthening our own self-regulation skills. Again, this is emphasizing working with children rather than teaching at or talking at children, how we can help to co-regulate while also understanding and strengthening our own self-regulation skills. Identify the skills and behaviors of the survival state, emotional state, and executive state. And it's important to understand each of the three. And then utilize conscious discipline brain state model to illustrate how to integrate and wire the brain for optimal development. And we'll see an image of that as we progress through the slides. So things that we learned. State dictates behavior. Okay, so which of the three states is the child in? We know that dictates their behavior. We must focus on the state first and the behaviors second. This goes back to understanding child development. So again, as you're reading your textbook and you're viewing and completing your conscious discipline worksheets, make sure you're stopping, connecting the dots. What is that? If you're a note taker, is that simply doing 2 dots with a line in between so that you can see those connections? Or maybe you're highlighting in pink the connections between the textbook reading and conscious discipline. Just think about those things. Maybe it's a practical application. Maybe it's not even notes, but the practical application of, oh, we read that in the textbook. That's what happens in my classroom. We need to focus on state before behaviors. Self-regulation puts a pause between the stimulus and the response, right? Pause really could be highlighted, underlined, italicized here. Self-regulation puts a pause between stimulus and the response. Again, thinking about the perception that we talked about. Things that we learned. Before inner speech matures, young children think in picture form. They are relying on what they see because the cognitive development has not quite caught up yet. So inner speech, before that matures, young children think in picture form. I saw this. This is what happened. Posting pictures of our expectations helps children encode information more easily so that they're more likely to succeed. It gives them pause. So let's go back for a minute. Focus on the state first and the behavior second. If the state that the child in, what is developmentally appropriate for them, is then reinforced with an image in the classroom, it's going to support the pause. Right? You have something to point to. You have something to walk the child and yourself over to, and not only look at, but then talk about, and then relate it back to the child. All right, so things that we learned, something else that you all listed was that play is essential for self-regulation. So left hemisphere, right hemisphere. Again, this is part of textbook. It's part of child development that you've learned. It's certainly part of conscious discipline. So the left hemisphere of the brain is responsible for controlling the right side of the body. It performs tasks that have to do logic, science, math, etc. The right hemisphere coordinates the left side of the body, and it performs tasks creatively and artistically. Right? And there's a quote in conscious discipline: countries that support free play have better academic gains than countries that do not support free play. And this is part of the Journal of Pediatric Medicine. And this goes to the fact that one of the concerns in education right now is that we're purely teaching the academic, math, language, science, social studies, technology. The right hemisphere, all those creative curriculum areas, dramatic play, blocks, puppets, the extension, puppets with the extension of literature, right? All those creative outlets still need to be supported for children so that we have this balance between left and right. One helps and should coordinate with the other. So the classroom environment, the classroom management, right? All need to be able to have a balance between the two to support play as an essential for self-regulation. Questions that you included. What techniques can be used to calm children who miss their family? So other ways in which you can help a child who is stressed or having emotions even throughout the day. Maybe it's not just drop-off time, but throughout the day. So techniques that we can use. So again, I'll encourage you to hit pause and think about what you've learned, not just from conscious discipline, but also from your textbook reading and your own experiences, right? What techniques can be used to calm children who miss their families? One suggestion might be to have pictures of the families somewhere in the classroom. If the cubbies are in the classroom, then maybe there's pictures hanging behind or on the side of the cubby so that they can go to that. A cubby is also a good place if it's wide enough for a child to sit and have a private moment. Another question that came up was if a person's brain states are disconnected very frequently and for long periods of times, what does that lead to? Would you consider that depression? So one possible outcome here is that this could develop into depression. Others could be language delays or other developmental concerns because they are not being engaged with. The children are not being engaged with. So if you're doing that in your classroom for however many hours that the child is part of your learning environment, but that's not the full picture. And we have to expand and contract out to the home environment or homes if you have separated families, right? And there can be a lot of different factors that play into the various environments children are a part of. Okay, another question. If I approach every situation with an executive state, what are the odds it will pull a child away from the survival state every time? Okay, so every, all, constant. These are subjective terms, and I really don't like to talk in subjective or these generalities. So let's take a little bit of a closer look at this one. All right, here's the brain state. There are three. The skills that we can access, and assess. Skills we can access. And then the question the state is asking. Okay, so let's start with executive function, the executive state. It's an investigation, wisdom, executive skills, thinking skills. So skills that we can access. The question the state is asking is, what can I learn from this? Okay, let's go back for a moment. If I approach every situation in an executive state, what are the odds that I will pull the child away from survival state every time? All right. Survival state at the other end of the spectrum here, the skills that we can access, attack, defend, surrender. The question here is, am I safe? In between, you have the emotional state. So skills, blame, shame, guilt, verbal attack, name calling. And the question with that one is, am I loved? Right? So again, let's go back. If I approach every situation in an executive state, what are the odds that I will pull a child away from the survival state every time? One, we need to recognize that there's this emotional state in between. We need to also understand child development so that we can understand the progression of this. There's something that we often talk about, and I've heard referenced mainly with with toddlers and preschoolers, is, gosh, I feel like I've told him that 1,001 times. Yep, and you're going to have to tell him one more time. Okay. And think about, how is it that you're telling them that? Are you talking at them with that information, or are you talking with them? Right? Because executives state this question, what can I learn from this? If you just talk at the child with a solution, it is very different than the tone, the physical approach, the emotional approach of how they can learn from what just happened. Right? I told you not to do that because it's not safe. The tone is very different than, hey, Billy, let's sit down and talk together. When you climb the shelf like that, it makes me very uncomfortable because I worry that you're not safe with your body. We really need you to keep your feet on the floor so that you're safe. What can we learn from this? But think about the progression of these brain states, and then also your approach with each of them. This goes back, we're going to connect the dots for a minute. This goes back to the figure 3.5 in your textbook. Children must have all three competencies to act compassionately. So going from a cognitive to an emotional to very specific skill sets. So see how you can connect the dots with these. All right, so this would have been a breakout room opportunity. What type of activities could support each of these three competencies? Cognitive, emotional, and then specific skills to tie it all together. So I encourage you to hit pause and write down some ideas. What are some activities that you would engage with? Maybe it's materials even that promote these things in your classroom. So hit pause, just jot down 1, 2, 3. Cognitive, emotional, specific skills. Okay, welcome back. So this is the conclusion of Conscious Discipline Review. You had some really good questions when you completed this next session of Conscious Discipline. And certainly if you have any questions that you want to discuss further, I'll encourage you to bring it to our next class so that we can talk about it as a group. If you have any questions about the content covered in this presentation, you're encouraged to connect with a classmate or your instructor. So let's move ahead and let's talk about this week 5. You're going to, if you haven't already, you're going to read chapters 3 and 4 or finish it. You have your classroom plan development as well as Conscious Discipline session 3 that's due, and those are due on Tuesday. Just a reminder here to be looking ahead, making sure that again you're connecting with classmates and instructors in appropriate time manners. All right, so let's break down week 5 a little bit deeper. Read, watch, if you haven't already, chapters 3 and 4, or continue it. Review this week 4 Zoom video. There are 2 parts. So thank you for taking the time. This should be completed by Saturday, September 25th, and this was part of your announcements, and it will be considered your attendance for week 4. So the D2L report will be accessed for that information so that your attendance is logged. You have 2 complete items for week 5, your classroom plan development and your Conscious Discipline week 5, which is session 3, creating the school and family. So making those connections between school center and family. All right, so there's a note here. There was a classroom management CM classroom design plan, and it is an examples document, and this has been added for your reference. That remember, this is your classroom plan development is just your first part of this project that will move throughout the semester. Okay, so be thinking about referencing that. This is hyperlinked from the slides. It's also available in that part 1. So you can have the full assessment supplement to reference, the document you'll type on, and then this examples document has also been added. I hope this is helpful information. On the following slide is week 6. So if you're feeling comfortable with week 5, read, watch, and complete, then you can scroll to the next one. I'm going to conclude the video. Thank you very much for your attention through both part 1 and part 2. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. That can be a phone call, an email, or we can set up a Zoom session. Take care.